We now start with the first session of this afternoon, which is about opportunities in industrial systems. And unlike what is written in the program, we only have one speaker in this session. But the good news is that he will cover some parts of the second topic. So we have Aníbal de Almeida, who will speak about consideration of system approaches for motors and motor-driven units, rationale and implementation challenges. And then he will as well cover some conditions and concrete examples of using system approaches.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to speak about motor systems, which is one of my favorite topics. Okay, motors are one of the most important types, if not the most important type, of electricity consuming equipment. Industrial motors in industry and in buildings consume about 40% of all the electricity which is generated. And if you take into account appliances like refrigerators, air conditioners, heat pumps, the electricity converted by motors is well over 50% of all the electricity generated. Also in transportation, trains, but also other forms of transportation are moving more and more to electric mobility, since the internal combustion engine is a dinosaur compared with the electric motor in terms of performance. In industry, motors are not used alone. Motors are equipment which converts electrical power into mechanical power, and this mechanical power is used in a wide variety of processes to move fluids in pumps, fans, and compressors, for processing materials like in mills, mixing machines, for materials handling like conveyors, like cranes. So a huge variety of equipment is driven by electric motors in industry, and roughly speaking, about 3/4 of the electricity used in industry is used by electric motors. Even in buildings, the so-called tertiary sector, electric motors use about 1/3 of the electricity consumed, as electric motors are used in ventilation systems, in air conditioning, in elevators. So they are still quite relevant in pumps for central heating systems, refrigeration. So not so relevant as in industry, but still quite relevant. So in terms of eco-design regulation, in 2009, motor regulation was enforced in Europe, basically to correct a situation in which was associated with the use of poor and medium efficiency motors in the European market. And this regulation addressed the most common type of motors in industry, single-speed induction motors in a range from 0.75 to 375 kilowatts. And this regulation is working quite well, as I will say later. So now right now we are completing a study for the European Commission, which has the final meeting next Monday, and for which you are most welcome to attend, although you have to register. And we are looking at other types of motors, and we are enlarging the power range. We are addressing motors from 120 watt. Why? Because there are many small motors which are relevant for power consumption in the range from 120 to 0.75 kilowatt. And we are also addressing larger motors, and for the first time we are also addressing electronic controls like variable speed drives and soft starters. As far as I know, nobody has done this in other parts of the world, to look at efficiency of this type of controllers. So basically, when we are using a motor, we have to look at a wide picture. We have to look at the system which is using the motor as one of its components. It's a very important component, but the performance of the whole system is a function of all the components that are involved. And it's like an orchestra. Suppose in an orchestra you have 20 good players and you have one bad player. One bad player can ruin the whole music. It's the same in a motor system. It's enough that one of these components is of poor quality in order that the overall performance is drastically reduced. So we have to look at not just at the motor efficiency, we have to look at the motor speed and torque. Actually, one of the most common mistakes is the users do not take the care to understand which are the requirements of a particular application. It's the first part of design of a motor system, is to fully understand the speed and torque requirements of the load. Only after this is understood, then you can start building your system. Many times it's the other way around. So you have to look at the motor efficiency, of course. You have to size the motor properly. You have to look at the power supply quality, which can influence the behavior of the motor, not just efficiency, but can also drastically affect reliability and lifetime. To look at mechanical transmission, maintenance, and last but not the least, the end-use device. There is a device connected to the shaft of the motor which is performing a useful function, for instance, a pump. So it's very important that this device that is at the end of the chain, that this device is properly chosen, has a high efficiency, is properly sized, and sometimes other aspects are also important besides these ones. So I will refer to this later. So we have here an example of a pumping system in which we have in the top a standard system, standard motor, a standard pump. We are controlling the flow with a throttling valve, and we are having a piping system which was not optimized. And on the graph below, we are replacing a standard motor by an energy efficient motor. We are replacing throttle control, the valve control, with a variable speed drive. We are replacing the standard pump with efficient pump. And we are also looking at the pipe. We are sizing the pipe properly. And this last item, the pipe can make a huge difference. In many industrial systems, you have closed-loop systems, and a large percentage of the mechanical power is lost as friction in the pipe. So if you have a narrow pipe, you are basically destroying mechanical power in the pipe. So basically, you need to integrate all these aspects in a good way. And if you do this, the reward can be quite impressive. You are able to save more than 50% many times when you are able to optimize the system which you are addressing. So the benefits of system optimization go well beyond cost reduction. Of course, if you use less energy, you are reducing the costs, the operating costs. But many times with energy efficient motor systems, you are able to improve process control, reduce waste, so you are gaining other benefits in terms of quality control, and you are also able, this is more and more important, to gain recognition as a company which takes care of the environment. So why is this motor systems carrot not enough to drive more users towards this type of strategy? One common barrier, particularly in small companies. Large companies have the expertise, but small companies many times lack the expertise. They don't have information. Sometimes when it comes to new technologies like variable speed drives, they perceive technical and operational risks. And sometimes also within the company there are professional and functional boundaries to support energy efficiency. For instance, you have in companies, some people are responsible for making the investments and other people are responsible for running costs. And this creates a barrier when it comes to making rational decisions. And in some countries, not so much in Europe, energy prices are subsidized, so they don't give the proper message to the users. So, short payback times in a situation of crisis, many companies take a very short-term approach. If an investment has not a guaranteed payback, say in 18 months, 2 years, they are not interested, and they put some priorities in the scarce capital resource which they have available, for instance, to increase production rather than improving efficiency. I was now commenting at lunchtime that I think ISO 50001 is a very important tool to overcome this lack of comprehensive approach taken by the companies to address efficiency. It's really essential to involve top management in energy efficiency policies in order to guarantee that this business is taken seriously. So in industries, basically, you have energy flows and you have material flows. And basically, what is important is to optimize both types of flows. And when it comes to energy efficient motor systems, because of the improved process control, you are able to also improve the performance related to the material processing. Better quality control, reduced waste, so these are added benefits from optimization of motor system processes. Well, we all know about the Ecodesign Directive, which is having a large impact in a variety of products. Motors were one of the components that were addressed by this directive, and this slide gives you an overview of products which are already addressed by Ecodesign regulation. We have circulators used, for instance, in millions of central heating systems. You have motors, single-speed induction motors. You have water pumps, and later you are going to have in a second phase wastewater pumps and clean water pumps enlarged. So the regulation is published, and then typically there are a few years for the market to adapt. And the idea is that these requirements are not fixed in time, they are progressively tightened in order to improve the energy efficiency, but in all cases the energy efficiency criteria is driven by life cycle cost considerations. So considering a typical application, a minimum life cycle cost design will lead to a reduction of the costs. This is the example of the motor situation. Only in 2007 there was agreement worldwide to decide on how motors are tested. This is hard to believe, that only in Tesla invented the induction motor 120 years ago. So it was necessary 120 years for associations around the world to agree on a testing standard for an induction motor. But in 2007, this was finally agreed. After you have an agreement on testing standard, you can then classify motors. In order that a motor made in Japan or in China that has a label means the same as a motor made in Europe. And in the last 12 years, happened a very drastic transformation of the market in Europe. Basically, before the year 2000, 2/3 of the motor were below the blue line. 2/3 of the motor sold. So in the space of 12 years, we moved from somewhere from here to the red line, So that's the minimum. Since July 2011, that's the minimum, that's the red line. In 2015, we are moving to the green line. So this is a remarkable achievement that happened in a relatively short amount of time. In terms of motor technologies, the European manufacturers 12 years ago were lagging in relation to manufacturers in other parts of the world. Now they have at least as good products as the products made in other parts of the world, and sometimes they have even better products. So this type of market transformation, which was carried out in Europe, had a positive benefit to promote the appearance of innovative products in the European market. And you have here basically two sorts of equipment, single speed motors that can be driven directly from the main supply, and you have variable speed designs, motors, which are particularly good to perform in variable speed, variable torque applications, where their performance goes well above efficiency. I give you one situation. Some of these motors, for instance, permanent magnet motors, have much higher torque than conventional motors. So in many cases, you don't need a transmission, you don't need a gearbox. A gearbox costs money and has losses and needs maintenance. So with new very high efficient designs, you are able to do a direct drive system. And it's a simpler system, is a more economical system, is a better system under several respects. Something that's important when you are addressing a system is looking at the impact when you are moving technologies. For instance, if you are driving a fan, and here you have the curve of the load curve of centrifugal fan, and you are changing the technology of the motor, the speed changes. And it's important that you are aware of this impact. Otherwise, you can negate the savings provided by the more efficient technology. So once you have the more efficient technology, you should be fully aware of what it has to offer. Not just make a straight replacement, but find out about what are the consequences, which in general are quite good. One of the technologies, if not the technology that by itself can have the largest impact in terms of motor system saving, is the use of variable speed drives. And basically, in Europe, we have a power supply that is 50 hertz, in USA 60, but basically, conventional motors are driven directly from the main supply, and their speed of operation is related to the frequency of the main supply. With electronic variable speed drives, basically, what we do is we convert AC 50 hertz into DC, and then convert back DC into variable voltage, variable frequency supply. And by this type of supply, we are able to change continuously the speed of the motor, either to very, very low speeds. For instance, in a steel mill, you can have a motor rotating at less than 1 rotation per minute, to a centrifugal machine where you are rotating a motor 20,000, 30,000 rotations per minute. So you gain a wide flexibility in terms of speed operating range, in many cases without the need of gearboxes. So One very important advantage of variable speed drives is they allow you to regenerate power. An application where it's obvious to regenerate power is if you are driving, if you are here in Brussels in the metro, when the metro approaches a station, the kinetic energy of the metro is regenerated back into energy. So the variable speed drives can also do this. But for instance, in an elevator, in a lift, you can do the same. So variable speed drive on in a centrifugal machine, you can do regeneration. In a crane, pulling containers from the ships, moving containers up and down. When the container goes up, you need power, but when the container comes down, you regenerate the power. So these are some of the features which allow you to improve efficiency, and of course, because you are able to start the motor in a smooth way, you reduce mechanical wear of the components, so you have longer lifetime of the mechanical components and higher reliability, lower noise when you are reducing, for instance, in a fan, if you are reducing the speed, you are reducing the noise. Something that is very important is how motors and variable speed drives, this is called the power drive system. You are connecting two components together, and the interaction between them is something that only very recently deserves attention. And some tests that have been made in some laboratories around the world prove that it's important to characterize the way a motor behaves when it's driven by an electronic variable speed drive. Because you can have situation in which the same motor, this is below the motor plus VSD, there are significant differences in efficiency when you are driving the same motor with a different manufacturer, a VSD made by a different manufacturer. And it's important that a standard is developed, because there is no standard to make this sort of tests. Fortunately, this is being done. So basically, the slide which I showed previously is looking here, looking at the motor and looking at the drive system. So is looking at the power drive system. It's important that you are able to evaluate and compare how a motor performs when it's driven by an electronic controller. This is the power drive system standard, which is right now being developed. But it's important also to consider when this power drive system is combined with a transmission plus a load, say a pump or a fan. And this is called what is the extended product. So this is the methodology that is being more and more addressed when you are dealing with motor systems. First, you address the power drive system, and then you address the extended product, which includes the end-use product. CENELEC, which is the standards organization in Europe, is now received a mandate from the European Commission to develop a standard for evaluating the performance of motor plus drives. And this is a very complex issue. The draft standard is about 400, sorry, I don't know what happened. The draft standard is more than 300 pages long, but one of the key issues that is important to assess the performance of a power drive system is to consider the energy efficiency indicators, typical energy efficiency indicators of motor-driven applications. Because when you come to motor systems, one barrier is all applications are different. And you may have the type of reasoning, since all applications are different, we cannot do any reasoning. That's wrong. It's the same thing as a person says, I'm not going to buy a fuel-efficient car because I don't know how many kilometers I'm going to drive. So, on average, it's possible through the stakeholders, to the industry associations, to identify typical operating profiles in terms of number of operating hours and the load distribution. For instance, if you have a pumping system, you can say that 50% of the time the pumping system is working at, say, 50% of the time is working at 70% of the flow, 25% is working at 50% of the flow, and so on. So it's possible to come up with indicators which are typical of many situations to assess the operating merits of the power drive system. So in terms of energy saving applications of variable speed drives, pumps, fans, and compressors are the most relevant. Fortunately, pumps, fans, and compressors represent 60% of all the motor applications. So we can say that the most relevant, thank you, the most relevant motor applications can benefit from variable speed drives. But other applications like conveyors, escalators, cranes can also benefit from this type of technology. This was the situation identified 10 years ago with pumps. This was a database that was built by the Joint Research Center, and we see for the same flow we have differences in efficiency going up to 10%. So this identified the need to develop pump efficiency standards. And these are the new regulation addresses clean water pumps and circulators as well. And there is new regulation that is being prepared to extend the scope of this regulation because pumps are so important. With pumps, something that's also very relevant to know is that the pump efficiency is strongly dependent on the operating point. So it's not just enough to select an efficient pump. It's extremely important, essential, that you are able to design the system in such a way that the pump is close to the best operating point. Otherwise, you are wasting your money. So these are examples of comparing throttling with variable speed operation, and we see here that in these examples we have throttling, bypassing of on-off control, and variable speed drive control, and we see here that with VSD control, basically we save half of the energy with throttling. Even compared with on-off controls, we save about 40%. Circulators is a success story. Circulators is an example of an integrated product. Basically, in the energy efficient circulators, you have an energy efficient motor, the pump, and you have the electronic speed controls, all integrated in a single unit. And this was an area in which the situation, the existing situation in Europe was extremely wasteful. The efficiency of conventional products were as low as 10%. It means only 10% of the electric energy going into a circulator was converted into mechanical power by the pump. With the new integrated circulators, it's a very successful story. And this is able to save several power plants around Europe just by replacing the old circulators with this new integrated product. So the Europump Association was supposed to be here today, so, but they are not. But Europump is taking this subject into consideration, and they are addressing the extended product approach, and they will be coming with a methodology to assess the extended product system, to consider the performance of the pump, the electric motor, plus the controller. Like the circulator. In a circulator, we already have an integrated product. Even when you don't have an integrated product, it's possible to have a methodology which is able to address this type of situation. We have some noise, yeah? So basically, also very important for this extended product approach is important to have the possibility of defining a typical load profile and reference control curve in order to be able to assess the performance. So I suppose I finished my time, yes? Okay. 1 more minute, okay. So with fans is the same situation. Replacement of inefficient throttling devices by variable speed control can provide you a huge power savings. And again, when you are addressing a fan system, you have also to consider the motor, to use an energy efficient motor, to use an energy efficient transmission, to use an energy efficient fan, and fans, some fans are a horror story. Fortunately, there is already regulation regarding minimum efficiency for fans. The Commission, here you see that consider a fan with the same power, with forward curved centrifugal fans. The maximum efficiency is about 44%. If you go to the backward curve, you go from 45 to 62. Why are these used, such bad fans? Because they are cheaper, they are more compact. So the designers like to use them because they can use less space and they are cheaper. But of course, on the long term, this is not a good design. So it's important to address this type of situation, and we have already regulation in Europe addressing fan efficiency from 120 watt to 500 kilowatt. Compressed air systems, the same story, it's also a system. There was a study made in Europe about 12 years ago, looking at 50 industrial systems, and the most important loss in the compressed air systems were leaks. Something as basic as leaking air was responsible on average for 16% of the consumption of the compressed air system. It was not something sophisticated, leaks. In some industry, leaks represented up to 50%. So it's not enough to buy an energy efficient compressor if you have a poor network. So again, the optimization of the compressed air system requires an integrated approach, looking at all the key elements of the compressed air system in order that you are able to minimize the energy consumption. And in a compressed air system, the energy costs are, in a life cycle analysis, are dominant, are almost 80% of the total costs. So the optimization of compressed air systems is quite important. Since compressed air, on average, represents about 10% of industrial electricity use. So it's one of the key applications that deserves to be addressed. Other applications from VSDs, if you have a conveyor belt transporting material, you can save energy. If you are not transporting at full flow, you can save. If you are only transporting 50% of the load, you can save 50% of the power. Power is proportional if you change the speed to the material flow. Elevators, this is a very, elevators, cranes, it's the same technology. When you change a conventional elevator, in a conventional elevator you have an induction motor, you have a mechanical gearbox. In a state-of-the-art elevator, you have a very efficient permanent magnet motor, no gearbox, able to do regenerative drive. What you are able to achieve is a reduction of 80%. It's not a mistake. So the energy consumption is reduced by a factor 5 in a crane or an elevator using this technology. So it's quite impressive, the savings that you can achieve with energy efficient motor systems. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, so now we can have the short, urgent questions and the other questions together, as he will be the only one. Do we have an extra microphone?
Hello. Hi, Carl Dahlman, Lund University. I want to ask you, when you talk about semi-analytical methods, I guess, if I understood this correctly, it will be hard to measure exactly all elements of the system and how they interact, so you need to rely on experience also. So I'm wondering a little bit, is there a method for doing this, and will the experts agree? And thirdly, will you need to involve experts from other fields, except for maybe motors, you need to move with other equipment? And finally, do you foresee any problem with getting acceptance for semi-analytical methods as the basis for legal standards, etc.?
Yes, your question is quite pertinent. If we consider, for instance, Europump is the European Association of Pump Manufacturers, and pump manufacturers know the requirements and the loads of their customers. They are in touch with the customers. And when this type of load profiles are built, they take inputs from a variety of people within Europump and come up with something with a load profile that is representative. Of course, in a particular situation, may be different, but it's representative. So it's something that is not very far from the average system. And something that's also important to refer regarding the eco-design methodology is that one of the steps in the eco-design methodology is sensitivity analysis. And typically there are two parameters which are quite relevant in sensitivity analysis. One is the number of operating hours. So suppose we have as target operating hours, say 3,000 operating hours. Let us see what happened to the economics if instead of 3,000 we have the half of the hours, say 1,500 or double the hours. If you increase the number of hours, of course, energy saving becomes even more relevant. But typically, you do the sensitivity analysis, reducing the number of operating hours, typically by half, and you also do the calculations by changing electricity prices. Unfortunately, in the last decade, electricity prices have been steadily increasing in Europe. The prices from Eurostat point a line that has a gradually increasing trend, but and it's not likely that we will see a sharp decrease in the electricity prices, but in any case, there are electricity prices variations in Europe. As you know, some industrial electricity prices, I suppose some countries like Scandinavia have very low cost electricity, and other countries, more to Southern Europe, they have more expensive electricity. So in the sensitivity analysis, there is also an assessment of the impact of the electricity prices on cost effectiveness and on the life cycle cost.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dusan Yakovlevich. I'm from Energy Efficiency Industrial Processes, and we are a technology neutral association. I mean, more and more we're working on industrial energy efficiency. We see that basically energy efficiency depends on the system. So I very much second, to what you're saying. But system, including also energy management systems, and also including isolation, including maintenance, as well as a people. What is your thought? Is there any way? I mean, also we are seeing the need to reduce the number of the kind of product categories on eco-design. Could we look at the eco-designing the whole industrial process?
Yes, you certainly can look at the whole process, and I think some large companies are doing this. So it makes a lot of sense. I have here one slide in which I have energy flow and material flow. So it's possible to do global analysis of the process. And sometimes you can even change the process. some types of manufacturing industries can have different types of processes to make some kind of transformation. So it's possible to do this analysis, both material in terms of material flow and energy flow, in order to create an optimization of the whole process. Yes, I agree with you.
Thank you. Edouard Toulouse, consultant. You mentioned the eco-design implementing measure for motors adopted in 2009. And it says that by 2015, the motor placed on the market should be either IE3 or IE2 equipped with a variable speed drive. What is your opinion on this? Will it be successful? Isn't there a risk that, for example, the variable speed drive that is equipped to the motor is not really fit or is bad quality?
Well, variable speed drives, I didn't have here a slide to cover that, but in general, the full load efficiency of variable speed drives is in the order 97 to 98%. And you can make very bad variable speed drives in the low power range. You have some drives being sold on the European market, say 1 kilowatt, 94% efficiency. But when you go to 10 kilowatt and above, you cannot have a very inefficient variable speed drive because you would kill the power semiconductors. So basically, you cannot go wrong in terms of full load efficiency. However, you are right in something, and the manufacturers do not like this. But something we did in a project we did with Fraunhofer on energy efficient elevators, we did the European project. We audited about 100 elevators around Europe. And in some elevators, the standby losses were 500, 600 watts. And this had to do not just with the lights of the cabin, which in some cases were poor, but with the electronic controller. Some variable speed drives are very poorly designed in terms of standby consumption. And in my opinion, I think variable speed drives should have on their label standby consumption, because this is something that if the drive is on, is consuming all the time. So coming back to your question, at the moment there are no requirements, and the industry doesn't like these requirements because they tell me, well, we cannot compare apples with apple. This variable speed drive has this type of intercommunication interface, other type of variable speed drive has not this communication interface. They came up with this sort of reasoning, which in my opinion is not a good reasoning. If a variable speed drive has 500 watt of standby consumption, is poor design, full stop. It's a shame. And if they were forced to put on the box in a label, this device has 500 watt of standby consumption, they would be ashamed. And they would improve the equipment. Because it costs very little, it's a question of design, it doesn't cost more. Typically it's a question of improving the design of the electronic part of the supply. So there is a risk that poor variable speed drives will be sold. Not very inefficient because of the reasons I told you, but in my point of view, it would be good if the user had some transparency in terms of knowing what he's buying.
Thank you. Floris Ackermann from BAM, we're a German government agency dealing with eco-design. Combining the first two questions, sensitivity analysis of operating hours combined with the life cycle cost, but also life cycle eco impact of the production of the motor, complete with use phase. You said the study in the 30 also looks into motors down to 120 watts. In this power range, I can imagine that there is a very wide variety of load profiles. So you might see a blender, you might see a ventilation unit driven by the same power class of motor between 1 and 6,000. hours per year. So I wonder how the study deals with this very wide range of load profiles.
Okay.
Affecting scope?
Yeah, I agree with you that in the small motor range there is wide variety of products. Maybe in Europe the number sold is hundreds of millions, but in the study there is one very important exclusion. Motors are only included if they can be tested separately. And this, for a blender, I wouldn't say. Also are excluded battery-operated equipment, which is also other type of equipment that is sold by the millions. Car motors operated in cars, for instance, the window driver, the windshield wiper. So motors used in cars are also excluded. Battery-driven cars and cordless application are excluded. So what we can come up with is motors which can be tested separately. And basically this includes single-phase induction motors, which are still sold in large quantity. For instance, in France there are 1 million swimming pools, so the French use a lot of motors in their pumps for the swimming pools, but also some people, they have a well in the garden and they have a pump to take water from the well. So there are some motors which, and also there are many small fans. And this is what is worrying. There are many small fans of extremely poor quality. The most inefficient motor, AC motor, is the shaded pole motor. Unfortunately, is the cheapest to manufacture. So you find in many refrigeration equipment, the fan from the condenser, on the condenser side, many times is a shaded pole motor which has 20% efficiency. So it's important that these motors are also addressed. And in USA, they already have regulation for low power motors coming into force in 2015. So it's three-phase motors are more important in terms of energy, and they have been covered from 75 upwards, but three-phase motors below 0.75 and single-phase motors are of course important. And in this power range is where you can have a dramatic improvement in efficiency by changing technology. Suppose you have a small fan in which you are using an inefficient induction motor. By changing to a permanent magnet motor, you can improve efficiency by over 20 points. And the motor costs the same for a fan. The magnets can be low-cost ferrite. So it's really a question of driving in the market in the right direction.
This is Alan Meyer. I have a question about motor drive belts. And you had one illustration with the belt in there, but you didn't talk much about efficiency of the belt itself and the losses in them. And I have a kind of a two-part question. First of all, is it feasible to measure the efficiency of the belts in a standardized way? And would it make sense to have a MEPS for, if yes, would it make sense to have a MEPS for belts?
Two answers for two questions. First of all, it's possible to measure the efficiency of a belt. Basically, you have the driving pulley, in which the driving pulley you have to measure speed and torque, and you have the output pulley, in which you also need to measure speed and torque. And you need to measure speed in both, because there is slip in a normal V-belt. If it is a teeth belt, so-called synchronous belt, the two pulleys rotate exactly at the same speed. But in most belts, you have some slippage. So you need to measure two speeds and two torques. So it's possible to measure. Second question. yes, it's possible to have minimum efficiency requirements, although V-belts have one characteristic, that is their efficiency drops rapidly from the nominal load. Why? If, for instance, you are driving a belt just with 50% of the load, there are fixed losses, which are the flexing losses, the hysteresis rubber losses that you have to pay wherever the belt is driving a useful load or wherever the belt is running without any load. And if you are overloading the belt, you are increasing the slip. So increasing the slip, you are also increasing losses. So with V-belts, you can certainly rate the belt minimum efficiency for the nominal power. The belt has to be properly tensioned and maintained. So V-belts are very tricky, and probably one of the, maybe they should be one of the most important headaches for maintenance people in a plant, is to have to periodically retension V-belts. Of course, if you are using synchronous belts, they last much longer, you don't need to retention them, it's really peace of mind, and they are more efficient because they don't have a slip. Since they rotate in synchronism, there is no slippage at all. Better still, if you have sometimes a situation, I have seen this myself in a plant. They have an oversized motor. Recently I visited a plant in Ecuador in which they have a 22 kilowatt motor, which was grossly oversized, driving a pulley. What they did, they replaced this oversized motor by a properly sized motor, and they did a direct drive without using the belt. So in this situation, they were able to achieve a series of benefits by avoiding the use of the belt. In some situations you can, provided your motor has enough torque to start the load.
Let's thank Hannibal again.
Thank you.